My name is Sean Hinton. I'm here. I lead the Canadian business for UiPath, and I'm here with two of my favorite people. I've got Scott Bedows, the CIO for Coke Canada, and Shameiz Hemani from Greenlight Consulting. And I'm looking forward to having a great discussion around how Coke Canada is leveraging RPA to make changes to their business and the impact that that's having. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Scott to introduce yourself.
Hey, good afternoon, Sean. So I'm Scott Bedows. I'm the CIO for Coke Canada, and we are the distributor of many beverages in Canada, the largest of them being Coca-Cola. If you don't know what Coca-Cola is, let me be the first to welcome you to planet Earth. Yeah, we're excited to be here talking about RPA today.
What's your favorite Coke beverage?
I have to say Diet Coke. You know, I'm avoiding the calories. I've put on the quarantine, or is the, you know, the COVID 40 or 19 or, you know, way too many pounds. The shirt's just a little too tight.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Shameiz, can you introduce yourself, please, and give us a little bit of your background as well?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Shameiz Hemani, I'm the CEO and RPA practice lead for Greenlight Consulting. If you haven't heard of Greenlight Consulting, I'm not going to have the same sort of cachet as Coke, so let me give you a little bit about our history. We're a 12-year-old company. We started in the IT world doing two main things, staff augmentation and testing in QA, and then spent a good 10 years in the QA world until we sort of felt like that business was waning, things were getting outsourced, and we had a great pedigree in QA, and we had a great team. And RPA just started becoming ascendant, like 2012, 2013, and what we decided was to sort of move the entire company over using our QA pedigree to get into RPA. Today, we do two things. We do staff augmentation, which we call our human resources side of the business, and we do RPA delivery with UiPath, which we call our digital side of the business. So we think we have the future of work surrounded, but we'll see how that goes.
Well, you're definitely doing some interesting things with customers, and we'll talk about that as we're going through the discussion today. Now, really important question: what is your favorite Coke beverage?
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to get political, but I love Mexican Coke. It's my favorite thing on the planet. They actually label the Mexican Coke at the grocery store because they have real sugar instead of the corn syrup sugar. It's my favorite thing. I still drink it. I should probably go to diet because I'm also got the COVID quarter going, but I'm going to lie to myself for a while.
I didn't know those were two different. I didn't know that was a different thing. That's very interesting.
Marketing, but I'm in. I'll pay the extra $2.
All right. Well, let's get down to RPA and how it's impacting Coke and Greenlight's role in that. Let's start with something pretty simple. What was the business problem you were trying to solve when you started? You know, let me take a step back. You and I met, Scott, probably a year and a half ago over dinner, and I mean, since then, you guys have done a lot of really impressive things with RPA. But what was the thing that started? What was the business problem that you were trying to solve that RPA fit and you got going with?
I think that, you know, if you look at RPA for us, it was really trying to unlock I guess I'd say the power of our people. You know, we are in a pretty complex system and a pretty complex business, and you know, having a lot of different needs for our people. We were continuously talking about, you know, lists of things that we needed to stop doing, things that we needed to stop but needed to get done. And so finding ways for technology to solve those needs was really critical for us and for the success of the business, which really led us to where we are today with RPA.
Now, the story's a little different than what we typically see with customers because you guys were Coke Canada is very heavily outsourced in a lot of the back office tasks and processes. Can you explain your approach and the vision you saw for RPA in that?
Sure. So, you know, we are definitely a heavily outsourced back office. We have a shared services organization with a lot of other Coke bottlers in North America, and a lot of, you know, traditional finance, AR, AP functions, you know, where you would find RPA, you know, as just an immediate use case, were already being done by others and being done with RPA. but we weren't doing RPA ourselves. And so, we recognize that part of our strategic vision is using technology as a competitive advantage. And if we were going to achieve that, we had to enter into some different types of technologies, and which is why we looked at RPA and said, where will it work in our business? Understanding, that automation is happening no matter what. So we established this team, this intelligent automation team, and we called it that intentionally to really try to brand, kind of the end-to-end automation, and really talk about the fact that, RPA is called maybe the sweet spot in the middle, but if you're using Excel and you're running a macro, that's automation. If you're doing workflows, you're using automation. On the other end of the scale, the business is saying, well, we need AI to solve this problem, and we need ML to solve that problem. And I don't even know that they know what AI and ML are. But just being able to say, how do we look at it, as a complete toolbox of what's possible, and what the tools are available at our disposal, and then applying the right tool to the right problem.
Perfect. Sounds very reasonable and a standard way to do things. I like harassing Shameiz a lot because it's fun, and he takes it and he gives it back to me. But really, for us, he's been a great partner over the last 2 years, or at least since I started working with the business. How did the partnership with Greenlight start? How did you guys find them? How, because I wouldn't have thought to look up Greenlight in the yellow pages for RPA as a way to get going. But how did that partnership start?
Well, I think it started, with a conversation actually with UiPath, and saying, hey, how do we get started? What does this look like for us to get started? And we really, we established a very quick, I won't even, I guess, proof of concept, which we did in, I think, like 48 hours. And, really just said, hey, wow, look at what this can do. Look at where this can go. But really understanding we had nobody internally at Coke Canada that could execute against that. We didn't have any type of a development staff. We weren't doing any type of app dev. So it's not like we had a great amount of resource in that space at the point. And so we really needed a way to get started. And so UiPath was able to introduce us to Greenlight, and they were part of our POC. And then we quickly moved from POC to really almost skipping pilot to just, hey, let's do this, let's get started, and let's figure out what works and what doesn't work. And if it's going to work, let's succeed fast. If we're going to fail, let's fail fast. But let's move the needle and let's go forward. So since that point, Greenlight has been an amazing partner, and really helped accelerate our RPA journey.
Shameiz has been a part of. This was probably the first account we worked on together, right? Shameiz, you and I, probably the first one with me being in the role where we were actively partnering together on it. So it's been a great journey. Shameiz, what was different about working with Coke, and what's different about the approach that Greenlight takes when working with customers?
It's always nice to walk in to vision and focus, right? I mean, when you sometimes you're spending a lot of time getting clients focused and making sure they have sort of a long-term vision. When we walked in with Scott and his team, it was really like, we know we're taking this path. We know we're committed to taking this path. So let's not spend all this time. We just need to be enabled. And that's sort of my favorite way to walk in. So, we keep talking about what's our secret sauce. I think what we do best in this big field of RPA delivery is we're really about enabling clients, right? Our core goal is within 6 months to a year. You don't need us anymore. You want us, you want to call us, you want to scale with us, and you want to bounce tough problems off us, but you should be pretty self-sufficient by that time. And I think that was sort of the messaging that resonated with Coke, because they had a vision. They knew they were going to put actual people at this. They knew they wanted to own it. And they just wanted enablement. And we have a unique version of enablement. We have something we call contract to hire, which we like to talk about a lot, which is basically what we do is we say, look, we understand the RPA business, we understand the technology needs, and part of our pedigree and staff augmentation really helps us understand fit for organizations. So what we'll do is we'll actually hire your team from scratch, fit to purpose for you. We'll keep them within the fold at Greenlight for 6 months to a year. We'll make sure they're trained up and working on your projects with all of our support and all of our infrastructure. And then we hand over the team to you as a full-time team that you take on. And there's a few benefits after the handover, right? We have something we call Therapy Thursdays, which is not as bad as it sounds, right? Which is where the entire staffing team comes in to just complain and tell us all their problems. But the real value of that is you get a bunch of consultants who are at a whole array of clients coming with their problems centrally and solving them as a team. And that's become extremely handy. We did this pre-COVID in a room locked together. We do it now over conference. It's equally sort of valuable. And all of our contract to hire alumni can participate in Therapy Thursday. So, most organizations, their staff gets stale from a technology perspective because they're always just working on the same thing. What this allows you to do is get the best of enablement and keeping everyone fresh with new problems. So
kind of creating a community that people can share and trust and all of that fun stuff with it. That's a great idea. I think we need to have Therapy Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays as well. I think given COVID. Yeah. So Scott, at this point, how have you done in terms of results and the impacts to the business versus what you wanted to accomplish? Like, are you meeting where you thought you were going to be? Are you behind, ahead? Like, if you were thinking about it from that context, where do you think you're at?
I think we've accomplished a lot in less than a year. So in less than a year, if you would have asked me in the beginning, and I think Shameiz would tell you this about me, he'd go, okay, you need to think about 6 to 8 weeks for each process, and you need to think about, complex things are going to take you 12. And I'd say, okay, let's get them done in half the time. And, and I really challenged our team to think differently about, the approach that we took. There were a lot of learnings that we had in the first, 1, 2, 3 processes that, probably, we ended up doing a second time or a third time that if we, and probably without the help of Greenlight would have done 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th time around. But that was okay. We wanted to move quickly. We wanted to learn. We wanted to fail fast. We didn't want to get it perfect because we knew that, there's that, whether you call it the 80-20 or the 90-10 rule, it's, you can get 80% of the work done in 20% of the amount of the time. It's the last 20% that takes you the last 80%. And if we can take advantage of 80% of the automation, that's great. And then let's circle back around and let's close the loop and let's close the gap on what that looks like. So in less than a year, we'll have delivered. We're at 10 processes today. We'll probably have another 3 or 4 done by the end of the year. And we've been able to save somewhere in the neighborhood of 7,500 hours of our people's time in the automation, not to count all the other benefits in terms of accuracy and risk avoidance and compliance and things like that. But just in terms of straight time of people that we've been able to save, over 7,500 hours in under a year.
That's great. It's good. When we think about one of the stories that I like the most about this whole Coke Canada COE and your program is the staff, the team. And there's something unique about that team that I'd like both of you to talk about a little bit, because it's not common that you see this type of structure for your team. So can you tell the viewers a little bit about some of the secret sauce that's in your high-powered team?
Sure. So, the team is not big. It's made up today of really, 3 individuals. One that came internally from Coke Canada. So Shrishti Gupta leads our intelligent automation team, and it's, she was in our business solution team prior to that. She came over to lead our intelligent automation team. And, through Shameiz and Greenlight, we've been able to add 2 additional developers. So Ravneet and Aruna, and they make up our entire COE and intelligent automation team today. We're looking to grow that, but it is an all-female team, which certainly wasn't set out to be that way. But we couldn't be prouder of the work that they've accomplished. And it's just amazing to see how they work together. It's amazing to see the results that they've been able to accomplish as, a small but amazingly mighty team of 3 people.
Very cool. And Shameiz, have you seen a difference when you were working with Scott to support the team and help build the team and kind of, I'll say, train them and educate them and get them going? What's the benefit of that team, the all women team bit?
Oh, well, I mean, let's start off with Srishti, because it's hard to have this conversation without naming her explicitly, right? And she was a sort of an internal person that they brought on. And I'm always scared when that happens at a COE lead level, because that's sort of the crutch of the whole team. She's phenomenal. I'm not going to blow smoke, but Scott's team actually keeps me on my toes more often than not. They're in therapy Thursday asking me questions I'm reaching for answers for and running around coming back to. So what, from what I see it as today, it's really a well-functioning team where they're all trying to solve tough problems. I mean, they're already at document understanding, right? They haven't even been there a year and they're doing the harder stuff. They're going at it. They're knocking it out of the park. So, the communication's great. Srishti's sort of open and honest about what she needs to do. She knows Scott well, she knows her team well, she knows us well. And so the questions we get are always meaningful, which is really great, right? Like a team's functioning well when the questions you get are hard. Right? They're hard. And the Coke team is good. They're nice folks. They'll sort of give us the space to sort of answer for them because they're not easy. But that's been meaningful. I think, we always say, I'm going to add a ton of value to your team by giving you this contract to hire. You're going to get a ton of sort of that therapy Thursday value coming in, but we're getting a lot of that back from Coke. And that's nice. That feels like we did all the right things to enable, and that they're surpassed anything we did and now on their own, and teaching us stuff. So it's a good place to be. I mean, we're obviously having this conversation because it's been a great back and forth, but I think it's even better than we think. Like it's been pretty amazing.
That sounds, the way you guys both of you are describing the relationship, that sounds to me like true partnership in my mind. I mean, that's what you want. You want to challenge each other. You want to get value from each other and then make both organizations successful. So it sounds like you guys are accomplishing that in a great way with great teams working together. I heard a rumor, Scott. It's a crazy rumor. I heard a rumor that there's some interesting names that the bots are getting. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when we started this, this journey, we really, wanted to get away from this idea of bots and humans, and so we really started calling them digital workers. And so, we said, well, if it's a digital worker and we need to hire the digital worker, then the digital workers need to have names. And so, we kind of just started talking about, names, and, you can probably see the Yoda here behind me. I'm a huge Yoda fan. And so Srishti named the first bot Yoda after me. And the names kind of just continue to flow. So we have no copyrights. So in full transparency, but we've got Yoda, we've got BB-8. We've got the Hulk. So we got into some superheroes. We've got Homer. We've got India. Yeah, we've got Indiana. We've got Janet. Take off the good place. And so we've got in every case bots that we've just tried to name and just give a personality. And in some cases, it really speaks to what they're doing for the business and the way we do it, but it also just helps us illustrate to the business. We do a showcase on every project that we finish, and just try to highlight what was the business problem, what was the solution, what have the savings been or the benefits been. But we try to put an image of that superhero in there just to give it some persona and really help the business understand that this is not just replacing people. This is about unlocking the power of our people, but it doesn't hurt to have some fun along the way.
That's pretty cool. I like what does the Homer bot do? Because that's unless it's on the plans. Nuclear plant. We know there isn't one.
No.
And I don't think you do McDuff beer. That was what it was, right? McDuff beer.
No, yeah, I would tell you that he probably eats donuts along the way, but he manages our equipment orders. So we have, which is actually a really cool story of how that came along. But it was totally, completely a cost avoidance move on our part. So a regulation came along where we needed to upload forms to equipment orders for EPA. And so we needed to have a way to do that. And the business was going, hey, we're going to have to add 2 full-time people to go do that. And in less than 6 weeks, Shristi and Aruna and Ravneet were able to take the process, develop what needed to happen, and get Homer in place to do the job and fully eliminate the need to just hire 2 people.
Oh,
exactly. No,
that's pretty impressive in 6 weeks. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's a great return to get a process up and running, and shows the power of the team and the platform and the capability. It's awesome. Now, I didn't really want to make this a COVID conversation, but I have to ask, what do you think you were able to accomplish pre-COVID, post-COVID, and do you see a big delta there, big difference between what you could achieve?
I don't think we've seen a difference in what we can accomplish. I think we've seen the importance of automation even more in the post-COVID world, and what it's going to do for us and why we need to be able to do it. I think everybody saw as COVID happened, the world changed, right? And so lots of things happened, lots of things shifted for our business. People went to working from home. A lot of our folks can't work from home. So there's a lot that needed to happen. And, we were able to, leverage, leverage the RPA technology to work against the COVID problem, but also to look at how do we just think about automation differently, and how do we need to, really, in our mind, double down on some of the automation efforts that we're making, so that, as we get into next year and the year after, how do we really think differently about how work is done, where work is done from, and in what way we accomplish the work.
All right, let's switch topics a little bit, because Scott, one of the conversations that you and Shameiz and I had a couple of weeks back was talking about this whole notion of citizen-led development and shadow IT and the impact on each other and how that impacts an organization. I'd like to hear from both of you. I'll start with you, Scott, kind of on your views on that citizen-led development and shadow IT, because it's where I'm seeing it across the country in organizations, as if they just go to the business and they start doing RPA, it creates shadow IT. If they go to IT, it sort of can stop there and the business doesn't get involved. But if you do it right, you eliminate both problems. You get to that citizen-led developer, you get rid of shadow IT at the same time. So can you both talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, in the beginning, we were a little leery of, citizen developers. We said, well, we're not going to let anybody do this. We're not going to let anybody, play in this space. But I think we've had I won't call it an epiphany, but, we've had a real change in philosophy. As we've thought through our technology as a competitive advantage strategy, we understand that technology really, and we've tried to stop calling it IT and really just call it technology throughout the business, because shadow, what we used to call shadow IT in a lot of cases was, I think, IT just holding on to everything. You can't do that. And so the business said, well, I need a solution. I need something different. IT is not going to deliver it. So I'm just going to go off and do it myself. And, IT said, well, that's shadow IT. We're not going to support it. And it became this prolific problem that, that just repeats itself time and time again. And I think what automation has allowed us to do is say, we don't need to say no, because we can provide solutions a lot faster and a lot cheaper. And it's okay to provide, a lot of CIOs I've talked to want, it's like, I want end-to-end integration. I want everything to work together. I don't want, I don't want things working around. I don't want to, have, and what we've been able to say is you can take a, call it a crawl, walk, run strategy to get there. And say, hey, if it's going to take us a year to go do the integration, well, I can get something up with RPA or some other form of automation, AI, ML, in 4 to 6 weeks. I can put that in place so the business can start the process, and while the rest of the automation is being, or the integration is being built. And then there's other ways to look at that where you could say, well, maybe I don't need to go build the integration, right? If it's going to cost me $300,000 to go build the integration from one system to the other system, maybe I can just use what we have today, and just maybe it's a good, it's not a band-aid, it's actually a bridge or a true solution that you can look at it that way. And so we've really tried to look at things a lot differently through that lens, and then also to look at it and say, there are, in the low code world of, the citizen developer tools that are available, being able to, give somebody the permissions to say, hey, we want you to do it in the right way, in the right architecture. And we want things to stay consistent. But, if you've got time on a Friday afternoon to go build something, and we can partner with you and through the COE to make that happen, why wouldn't we want to? Because, truly we start to not only unlock more business things that we can get done with our team, but, when we start talking about unlocking the power of our people, well, there are other people out there who are tech savvy, who can do things within the business, and we really can do more. And those are the same people who before were creating Excel macros and workflows and all these things in SharePoint and all these different ways of doing things that, we've just been able to say, hey, here's the next level of tools in the toolbox. Let's work together on it.
Yeah, and you're extending the capability. And typically those people are closer to the business and they understand the process. So now you're able to get to some of that, I'm going to call it task automation, that you were never going to get to just because it's not, you wouldn't have the bandwidth or the skill sets necessarily, or the knowledge of the processes to get there, right? So it's very interesting. What two things I want to come back to though for you after is, the bridge comment. I really like that approach, right? Is, hey, does it financially make sense to actually do that integration, or is this a better solution? That's really important. And then something you said earlier, I think is really key too, because I have this conversation with other clients all the time. It's okay if you have a 26-step process, it's okay to only automate 18 steps of that and get the value out of that versus doing it perfectly and having it 100%. That's okay, because that's still driving value for the organization. Shameiz, what's your perspective on Shadow IT and the citizen-led developer? Because you get to see it not just in Coke, but you get to see it in other clients as well that we're working together with.
Yeah, and we get to see it internally, right? And I'll get back to sort of what I think the values are, but I'll just a little anecdote internally. We have an internal lunch process where back when we were in the office, people would like, wait, where do we want to go for lunch on Thursdays? And one of the guys developed a bot just that we could talk to now that you could say, hey, Siri, kick up the lunch picker, and it'll just go and do it. So he just built that on the side while he was working and got to show it off over last Therapy Thursday. So it sort of empowers everyone to sort of add value. But if we could step back, like before it was Shadow IT, it used to be called end user computing, right? And before it was Shadow, people were actually using Excel, which was an IT tool back then that we would deploy onto data, and they would build macros, and they were like, "This is great. I've made my job easier." And then IT came in and said, "Well, there's, the business has this all over the place. We don't know how to centralize it. We need one version of the truth." All real issues. And I think that push away of the business and IT sort of happened. What's awesome to see is the citizen-led developer movement. It's really more than the sum of its parts, because it does a bunch of stuff Scott's already doing, right? One, it's softening the idea of bots, right? I recently heard someone that was a power user in the business say, "This bot has my back," right? Which is kind of, okay, well, now we're in a different place. The bot's helping this person and they've built it on their own. And now IT sort of enabling end user computing again with platforms and centralization. The other thing that makes this sort of more than the sum of its parts, and all of RPA the sum of its parts, is every time, and this is not anecdotal, this has happened over the last 4 years more and more, every time you automate a process or a tool or a technology or an app or a system, the next time you automate it, it's just naturally faster to automate, right? Because now the hard part's the process, not the technology. And that's what you're doing it. Now, if your power users in your organization are now doing it, that's going to accelerate how many components are sitting there in your libraries and how fast you can do it. And it also accelerates how fast they can build it. So what I'm seeing now is that panacea we always used to talk about, where you're starting to get that flywheel spinning faster and faster and faster because everyone's coming in. Now, governance models are important. Managing all that is non-trivial, but I think the accelerations you get out of it are real and are happening now. I don't know. Do you see that, Scott? Like, are you seeing some of that economies of scale?
Yeah, I think so. I think we feel the same way that, the minute once you've done, and that's why I think we're starting to pick up steam, right? It's, it's the hockey
Learning
stick
curve to get going, right? It's that snowball effect. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you start to see the upswing and it moves faster and faster. And so, the more people that you have on board, and we've even tried to get into, having people build different components together and say, okay, you work on this end of the project, you work on the other end of the project, somebody else will, let's meet in the middle on how we get there. Now we haven't fully gotten there. We're only in our first year. But, I think we see the power of how teams can work together. And let the business user do the front, I'll call it the front end, and let the, COE and the developers do the back end, and how they can meet in the middle to accomplish things in a much, much quicker way and create repeatable process.
And the tools are getting more mature, right, Sean, Scott? Like today now, one way to meet in the middle is the end user does task capture, and then they have a much more interesting conversation versus sort of that original pedantic one about, okay, what exactly do you do?
They're faster.
Yeah.
They're so much faster by giving that end user the power to describe and record what they're doing. And that gets, then the person who's going to develop it can actually go do it probably 50% faster, I would say.
You're in the ballpark. And I think one of the things, this is a new technology, and we've always been in this world, right? New technology comes in, we worry about jobs, we worry about our jobs, how much of this can do. You know what that task capture process does to end users? It actually shows them how much of that robot is sitting inside them, right? Because when they start doing this and recording and clicking.
Very interesting.
Yeah, they're kind of, I've had people go, yeah, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? And they didn't think that when they started, right? They thought this was their job. And people are capable of so much. To get some of this off their plate originally was really scary. And part of this sort of working together kind of goes, what can I do now, right? I think we've all hunkered down to a degree. We know everyone's trying to do more. Work is no longer a place. It's everything. It's in all parts of my day. So if I can get rid of the stuff I don't want to do, that mindset's been important, right? I think that the citizen-led developer thing has helped me sort of kind of go from, oh crap, the robots are taking all your jobs, to, oh, there's a lot of work here we can do that we weren't doing because we were doing really this meticulous day-to-day stuff, the swivel chair stuff. Mundane. Yeah. And the world is mundane enough right now. So let's not do any more mundane stuff.
Well, you said something a second ago that I don't want to double click on it, but I wanted to just make a point. You talked about Excel being a technology and a business tool, right? Yeah. Can you imagine today going to your CFO and having to build a business case for Excel?
Yeah, it's so no-brainer.
That's what's happening now with RPA. RPA is becoming that next generation of business tools for the masses. And that's why citizen-led developer becomes interesting. So a lot of our customers, when they're funding this, are thinking about it in a business case perspective, right? And what you're going to automate, when in reality, there may need to be a shift in how CFOs and business leaders are thinking about automation, and that this is just a tool for the masses, as you just said. So just something to think about.
If I can I throw one more anecdote in on citizen developers? Because I know we talked about the business a lot. Let's talk about IT, right? Because that's an area today where, we have some anecdotal views with clients where we've done hackathons with IT, and they naturally gravitate to this, and they're naturally not on board right away because they've seen 1,000 tools. We did one with a client of ours out west, and it was a Saturday hackathon, right? It was COVID, so everyone was kind of like at home doing it. And they had their IT team trying to just solve problems they had, provisioning, stuff they do day to day. And I was surprised at how much of a success it was, because after that, if you looked at the funnel coming in of processes, everybody wanted to do it themselves, and they had a ton of processes on the plate. And I know, with where we are today and over the next 6 months, that suite of products that helps IT, that automatically does provisioning, that has bots built into Studio Pro, those are all very cool tools that are going to enable IT to be citizen developers in ways that, they always had that knack, but now sort of a mechanism to do it.
Very cool. Yeah, no, and those hackathons can, if done right, drive tremendous value for an organization and building that demand book, we'll call it. Yeah. But I got a two rapid fire kind of question. What's the one thing you are most proud of in this automation journey so far?
I think it's our team. I think it's, we talked about Shrishti and Aruna and Ravneet and the team and what they've been able to accomplish. I think I don't think I thought we would be as far as we are today, or that we'd have the skill set that we have today. So I think it's our team and what they're doing to really focus on unlocking the power of the people inside our organization is really what I'm most proud of. What's the one thing you would do different? Oh, one thing I would do different. The one thing I would say we would do differently is, we got started so quickly and so fast that, we just said we're going. And we didn't probably put some standard project management behind some of these things, and to understand that, in some cases the business was like, we want to change the process and we want to do the automation at the same time. And that becomes tricky, right? You're trying to build the plane and fly the plane at the same time. And it's hard. It's hard work. So I think we would have probably put, and this is something that's on our roadmap for going into next year, is we're going to put some standard project management in place. We're going to do a lot more business process documentation to say, if you're going to make changes, you got to make the changes first. If, what is it that we're trying to solve for? What does success look like? And really defining how we get there. So I think we've seen tremendous results, but I think we can definitely see a lot better results by putting some better project management in place. That's I think important. You said something too that was really that I've been saying. So I've been saying all along around automating processes, and this is one that it's a philosophical thing around processes to me. So my background, I'm an industrial engineer. So it's all about process improvement and making streamlining and doing all of that kind of stuff. My view, and I'm not saying it's the right view, my view on this is just automate it. Get it automated, start getting the value, and then apply process improvement to it after the fact, because then you're getting the value quickly, and then you can come back and then create capacity in the organization to then, after you've done 10 or 15 processes, come back and re-engineer them. In a perfect world, 100% you want to re-engineer and then automate at the same time. But the reality is most organizations don't have the bandwidth to be able to do both and go quickly and create that capacity in the organization. So it's interesting that you brought that up. I think that's a really important topic we could talk about. Yeah, I think if I look at that, I'd say, our goal with a lot of this was to find the fastest path to value. And it's to find the fastest path to value in everything that we do. And so, I think that's why we kind of always look for the 80% to automate. We always look for what are the pieces that we can automate, what are the pieces that aren't, that are repeatable that we can get in there. And even if, if there's this end-to-end process with 18 steps, can we just go automate step 6, 7, and 8 and, improve the amount of time that people have then to go work on the rest? Because to your point, they don't have time to work on everything else. And we're finding that, in the business as we're talking to people, it's like, well, yeah, hey, this is really easy. It'd be really easy to automate. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, I forgot about that exception. Oh, I forgot about that exception. Oh, I forgot about that exception. And, and well, yeah, I do that with my left hand on Fridays, but I do it with my right hand on Thursdays. Like, you kind of go, okay, we get into that and just say, we're not going to automate the exceptions. We'll handle your Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays. And on Thursdays, if you want to use your right hand, and on Fridays, you want to use your left hand, that's your 20%. Just keep doing that. But for now, let's just automate what we can automate as a standard process, and the rest of it, we'll come back to.
It's a great approach. I really like it. Now, Shameiz, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit on this one, and a rapid fire question. What is the one thing you wish Scott and the team would do differently?
I mean, I'm going to echo a bit of Scott's, because I mean, it's hard to talk about that with a team that's already done 10 and it hasn't been a year. And I think 5 of those they've done on their own, right? Like that's kind of amazing where I got to step away. I would say it's probably time to step back and start doing a real process catalog, because they've been pretty opportunistic so far. It's like, we need to automate this. We need to automate this. I think with a 3-person team, even if it's growing, you got to start getting pickier on processes. So just a better sweep, wider. I know with call center, there's a few areas that's probably worth doing. It's hard to step back when everyone's busy, but that would probably be the only thing I could sort of hand out as advice.
Now I'm going to ask you guys both a loaded question.
Oh boy, I thought we had loaded questions.
No, these are, at least I'm off script here, baby. I'm totally off script.
All right.
What is the one thing that because we're the third leg of the stool in the partnership, right? You guys are driving it. We're here to support you. Is there anything that we can do differently to make you successful?
I think the challenge with you guys have been growing like crazy, so it's fun to watch. And so when we have a hard problem, it's just a little harder to get someone to pay attention, but that usually means instead of 12 hours, it's taken 36. So that would probably be my core thing. I feel that a lot more lately just because there's lots of hard problems around, but other than that, it's been pretty good. Scott?
It's just, us, and it's some of this is probably on us to better understand, and you guys, but it's the roadmap and where you're going with the products. It's like, hey, we just went out and did something, and now all of a sudden, oh wait, there's this new product coming, and we should have done it differently. Or, hey, there's this happening and that. In the RPA space, right? There's so many different, products and competitors and different things. It's just understanding where the sweet spot is, where the right place in the toolbox is to use UiPath and the tools that you have today, how to get the most out of them, and then how to think about how those tools are evolving in the future.
Yeah, that's good feedback. And that's tough even for our teams to keep, because it's changing. You're right. It's changing very, very quickly. And when we talk to our customers, we're trying to talk about it in the vein of, this is the value that these components are going to drive for you, not so much about feature and function, but at some point we need to update both of you on and keep current on what's coming and what's we could probably do a better job on that for sure. But it's changing. It is changing very, very quickly and evolving.
I mean, the good thing about Scott's team is they have a sort of a 3-person team that sort of runs around, but somebody's always trying something, right? I'm always getting a call that's like, hey, we're going to try document understanding in Action Center, and I need these licenses, and we're going to try it this way. Is this the best way? Should we try this application instead? And they go out and they bat it around, right? So we have those conversations, we do the demos, I think, and then they go look at it, and they're doing that right now with document understanding, right? We've done the demos, we've showed them what it can do, we've done the POCs, and now they're just punching away at it, making sure it works for them before they bring it on. So I think that's ownership across all 3 of us, right? In terms of keeping us abreast of what's going on, us sort of highlighting the things we think are important, and then Scott and Srishi's team to go in and start batting around and make sure it makes sense for them. I've seen that work really well, and sort of is a testament to their sort of fail fast, try fast.
So for anybody listening, what would you tell them if they're just starting out on this RPA journey and they're starting to think about it? Scott, what would you say to a peer of yours that's just kind of getting their toe wet in this?
I'd say I think it's automation is happening in your business, whether you're a part of it or you're not a part of it, right? And I think, as we talked about, and for us, it's really, I'd encourage people to take the toolbox approach, and that is, there are automations at the easy end of the spectrum. Like, you don't need to go build RPA for something that an Excel macro can do. Excel macros work great for what Excel macros are. Use them. don't stop. This is not a cookie cutter approach. You really need to look at the business problem and find the right tool. And if it's at the low end of the spectrum and it's Excel macros, if it's, you know, in the middle in that sweet spot and it's RPA, if it's at the other end of the spectrum and it's, you know, AI and ML and you know, things in that range, but find the right tool in your toolbox. And, you know, no different than when you're building, you know, you're building something at home or doing home repair, you know, you don't grab the screwdriver to, you know, to do everything. So nor do you grab the power saw to do everything. So I think it's important to make sure that you have all the right tools in your toolbox. And then the other thing I just encourage people to do is, you know, it's our philosophy of just, you know, just doing it, right? You know,
I was hoping you were going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and it's like just, you know, and you know, we took this lesson learned from the Amazon leadership, and that is, you know, is what you're walking through a one-way door or a two-way door? And if it's a one-way door, you need to really think about what you're doing. If it's a two-way door, then walk through it, figure it out, and if it doesn't work, walk back through and build a new door. And we've really tried to apply that to our technology journey, and you know, and I think this is case in point where we've just said, you know what, if we're going to fail, let's fail fast and let's move on to what is going to work, you know, because you know, we're going to make mistakes, things are going to happen. The quicker you learn from them, the quicker you're able to realize the success.
Very cool. Good advice, Scott. Shameiz, what would you say to a customer just embarking on this? And you have a little bit of a different perspective because you get to see 5 or 6 or 12 or 15 customers and see the difference. Yeah. The one thing you would tell a prospect.
I think today we're at a really different place than what I would tell them 12 to 18 months ago. But you know, when we started out, everyone wanted to do one bot and sort of maximize it and then sort of believe in it and go. And I know Scott and I and Trevor, when we were having this original conversations on software licensing, we were talking about sort of the value of a growth mindset with bots. Like it's true that if you've got to rise to your bot level, you will. And every company I've seen sort of buy bots for over 3 years and say, okay, we're going to grow, has grown to their bots and needed more. And I know that's self-serving and it's hard to prove, but historically what I've seen is you're going to find it. So I know Scott talks about the two-way door, and I think what he meant by two-way door in this case was, yeah, he bought the bots for 3 years, but if he didn't need to use them for everything, he wasn't gonna. But in the end, what you're seeing is that he capped that usage of the bots. And in the third month, I think Scott and I were like, he's like, I don't think I'm going to use these bots. Are you still saying that, Scott? Do you still feel like you're not going to use them? Like,
oh no, no, yeah, sure. he's like, man, you need to put a license order in for next year. And in some ways, in all honesty, we may need to have that conversation because we're already at the point where Shristi's talking about, you know, hey, I need to have additional scale, and you know, we found some processes in the business that happen at a regular pace throughout the year, but at year end, maybe happen at a significantly higher pace. And rather than throwing a ton of hours and people at it, we're going to be able to throw the bots at it, but we're going to need bot power. So, you know, I do think we're going to be expanding beyond what we initially purchased, you know. But yeah, I do think I do agree with you that, you know, the strategy needs to be like, it's not really, you don't have to you didn't have to convince me, at least, that like, hey, doing RPA is a good idea. It's like, well, let's just find out how to best use it and how to best use the tool and how to grow. Was really where we were at.
Perfect. All right. Last question to you, Scott. And this is, you know, I want to talk about the future. Where do you see Coke going with hyperautomation, you know, in 2021, 2022? Like, where do you see this going? Because you talked about AI a little bit before. You talked about some other components and that we've talked about before around, you know, some of the newer capabilities. What do you see?
You know, I think, looking at the power of, hyperautomation and where we can go with it, we see a lot of opportunities in eliminating mundane work, but we're also really trying to focus on how do we add additional value above and beyond that? And so in the contact center space, how can a a virtual bot agent read the customer information, go out and get the weather for the customer for that week? How can it go get the events that are happening around that customer and have a conversation with the customer like, I live in your same zip code, right? And how can you do that? We see some opportunities in our revenue growth management and our finance space. As I said, we outsource a lot of stuff on the back office side, but in terms of being able to run scenario planning, being able to do planning in other areas. Now we have tools for some of that kind of stuff, but being able to use AI and ML on top of that to run additional scenarios to be able to continue to learn and grow and use that, I think is important. We want to unlock the power of data, and certainly using the bot power and the AI and the ML to really help enable advanced analytics, I see as a critical component. But really for us, I think there's a ceiling of, call it cost avoidance. There's a part of, taking costs out of the business. There's a part of, just unlocking the people that are there. But then there's the really on top, call it the whipped cream and cherry on top for me is growing revenue. And how do we start to unlock top line sales?
That's awesome.
I'm doing this. So I had a really good conversation with Srishti a couple of weeks ago, because once they started using AI Fabric, she's got all these great ideas. And one of them I thought was really interesting to talk about in terms of ML was preventative maintenance on machines on the factory line, right? And so the idea here is, hey, I know we have a maintenance schedule, but could we start predicting breakdowns of machines and then use the bot to do the final mile to go get that service order in so that machine never breaks and our line never stops? And it just, once these sort of avenues are opened, you can start looking at some very cool use cases, right?
And that's the exciting, to me, I view RPA and hyperautomation as this enabler to get better value out of AI and machine learning models out there, right? And it's a great opportunity to do that. And we're seeing that in lots of customers across Canada and all through the world. So it's a great point and a great addition. Well, listen, Scott, I want to thank you for taking the time, and I want to thank you for your business. Shameiz, I want to thank you for taking the time, and thank you for being a great partner. And this has been a lot of fun. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, message UiPath, and we'll be happy to try and get you some answers. All right, take care. Bye-bye.